Well, good afternoon. Happy 420, everyone, from San Francisco. Let's see here. Our panel is about disruption, everything that we've had to do to get where we are. And also I wanted, Ashley, one of our panelists, said, like, not only are we industry disruptors, our industry is being disrupted. So we're going to talk a bit about that, too, how the cannabis industry is actually being disrupted and disrupting, I guess. Well, my name's Debby Goldsberry. I've been in the cannabis industry for 30 years. I'm the CEO of Magnolia Wellness Dispensary in Oakland, and I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for High Fidelity Dispensary in Berkeley. Please come visit. We have a vape lounge at Magnolia, so you can actually try the samples if you want. I have been a disruptor from day one. The first thing we had to do, of course, is disrupt prohibition. We had to tell the DEA and the police and the elected officials that this is a democracy. The voters run the democracy, that the government's supposed to make laws based on facts and science, and when they don't, we, the people, take charge of the democracy. And on cannabis prohibition, they had failed us epically, and in fact, prohibition was illegal, and our acts were what needed to be done to, as Jack Herrera said so eloquently all those years, make sure that hemp can save the planet. So I've been very excited to be a part of this movement. My own activism, I've ran 2 local marijuana initiatives. I ran a recount. If you ever get a chance to demand a recount, it is just as fun as you can imagine to demand a recount. We won the recount. We did a referendum in San Jose when they passed a law trying to make marijuana dispensaries illegal. We did a referendum. You know, if the city passes a law, you can undo that as a citizen using the referendum process. I was subpoenaed by the feds to testify against Ed Rosenthal in his federal trial and refused. Went to federal court in front of Judge Breyer, who said the refusal has been brought into my court with such dignity and care, and we can see that when people have strong views of these intense issues, that they can come into federal courts and make their case in a way that's intelligent and comprehensive and matters, and he congratulated us, and rather than making us testify, set us free. That was incredible. I opened my first dispensary, Berkeley Patients Group, in 1999, when it was the right thing to do, not the legal thing to do. And now at Magnolia Wellness, I've been involved in a turnaround project for those people in the industry. You know, our industry's 20 years old in California. People like me, if we've made it this far, it's been tough. And we're in debt, and we've struggled, and a lot of us went to jail, and we've suffered. We probably all have post-traumatic stress disorder from having to fight the feds and fight our government and deal with our families and face the stigma of the cannabis prohibition all these years. Cannabis can help with that. Cannabis can help with that. Hell yeah. Smoke them if you got them, not here. So at Magnolia, I've been involved. I took over Magnolia. If you want to get in the cannabis industry in California now at retail, really the only way in is acquisitions. I took over Magnolia, like one of the many dispensaries. It was 7 figures in debt. I've been working on a turnaround project there. So close, so close. Can't wait to finish this turnaround project and to start sleeping at night again. We'll get there one day.
There's a strain for that, too.
And look, I'm still on the mission. Hemp can save the planet. And I know we're all here for that, too. I've known Alex Rogers, the guy who puts on this conference, for almost 30 years. And yeah, we're building a business, but we're also building a community. And we really are trying to make a nicer society through the legalization of cannabis. So with that in mind, we've got a panel of disruptors from a bunch of different fields. We have a really, I think, exciting panel planned. And so just let me introduce the panelists, and then I will turn it right over to the first speaker. First, we have Zack Darling right here. Zack is a marketing guy from Hybrid Collective, doing a lot of stuff. I'll introduce him in a moment. We've got Lance. We've got Lance from Boveda, but of course Lance comes from the online world. He was the former GM of marijuana.com and a number of different companies that I'll tell you about. We've got Ashley down there. Ashley is a lawyer and also in the banking industry, so I'm looking forward to find out what is coming up for banking. And then we have Vinoo down there at the end. I mean, this guy's such a badass lawyer, you're not even gonna believe it. He's an East Coaster, he's still doing criminal defense, people are being arrested for cannabis out there. I mean, they still are here to some degree. He's gonna make sure that our industry stays safe and we're gonna legalize it, but in the meantime, we're gonna keep people out of jail while we do it. So with no further ado, let me introduce my first panelist here, which is Zack Darling. I mean, I love this guy. He's the CEO, the chief eternal optimist of his company. He founded the Hybrid Collective. It's a full creative. It's the Hybrid Creative. Zack is from the Hybrid Creative. Okay. Yeah, because the collective should be a dispensary, right? There's your opportunity. He founded the Hybrid Creative. It's a full-service design and development marketing company. They do branding, they do identity, they do package design, they do packaging, website development, marketing tools, and much, much more. So, Zack, take it away.
Hello, everybody. All right, hot mic. I like it. How's everybody doing? Good. Good. Thank you so much for the introduction. As was mentioned, I'm the Chief Eternal Optimist at the Hybrid Creative. We are the top creative agency for cannabis ventures here in the United States and soon to be international. We've been in business for about 9 years, working within the hydroponics industry before cannabis became a vert. We're old school. I was raised on a hippie commune by pot farmers in the Emerald Triangle. So you could say I'm second generation. Before we got started this panel, I really felt like I wanted to just identify, like, what does it mean to be a disruptor? It's a buzzword in the industry, and here in San Francisco and the .com world and Silicon Valley, it's definitely an overused buzzword. So what does it mean for us in the cannabis industry and for us as individuals to be disruptors? Well, when I was a hippie kid, I got kicked out of the Waldorf school, and I got kicked out of the other hippie school because I was always a disruptive child, and I learned the value of attention through disruption. Now, maybe that wasn't the most positive thing because it ended me up in public school where I learned discipline, but it's a valuable lesson in how we can challenge the status quo of what's going on in any given moment and then all of a sudden divert attention to what we're doing. Cannabis in itself is a disruptive industry. Right? We have disrupted the world on such a tremendous fundamental basis, from the alcohol industry, from prohibition, from legality, from conservative agendas, from what law enforcement has been telling us, from misinformed propaganda. Cannabis turned that entire world on its head. So every one of us, every one of you is a disruptor by just being a part of this. And that's part of the reason we love it. We're excited about it because it's purpose-driven. Purpose-driven brands, purpose-driven businesses, purpose-driven industries are creating change, and people love being a part of change. So, by its very nature, being a disruptor, it's valuable for us to be involved in, and it's exciting for us to be involved with this because we're challenging the way things were. Because the way things were wrong, and we all agree about that. So, but now we're in the situation where we're inventing a new industry in a world that had never existed really before because it had been driven in the black market, and now we're disrupting ourselves. If you look at what's happening in various, how many small mom and pops do you know that are out of business right now? Because things have changed so much. The way things were, we're becoming an internally disruptive industry within itself. And this is presenting new challenges for every entrepreneur and business person and venture, as big money and big multi-state operators and hugely capitalized businesses are starting to crush a lot of the smaller brands and smaller businesses. That disruption is causing people to need to consolidate, come together, and bond and create kind of collectives and communities through distribution networks or what have you. So I have so much to say on this matter, and I'm looking forward to this panel with these incredible people, but thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to the talk.
Let's hear it for Zack. The Hybrid Collective, I did it again, the Hybrid Creative. The Hybrid Creative. Tell us, what do you guys do over there? I noticed on your website you really have a lot of killer brands that you represent, and you're doing a great job getting them seen in the industry. Who are you representing? How do you do it? And how are you guys being disruptive over there?
Great. Well, we are, like I said, we're the premier creative agency for cannabis ventures. We've launched and taken to market some of the biggest brands here in California, especially. In January, our agency was acquired by Kushco Holdings, previously Kush Bottles, which has really empowered our agency to create our dream of being the international cannabis agency. So we want to basically understand what marketing and compliance means in every existing and emerging cannabis market globally, to where when people are ready to take their brands global, we're obviously the agency to go to because we truly know what that means on a cultural level as well as a legal compliance level. One of the brands that we work with is Bang, one of the sponsors of this event, and I take my hat off to them because they were disruptors in the very beginning when nobody was becoming multi-state, when nobody actually was being bold enough to be relicensing their brand across state lines. Bang was already vastly ahead of it, and that's part of the reason they've become such a household name in the cannabis industry. One of my other clients that I would say has done a fantastic job of being disruptive is Canacraft. Absolute Extracts makes a bond agreement with Lagunitas. They come out with 2 products. One is a line of cannabis extracts that are infused with hop terpenes, right? So it tastes like you're vaping an IPA, but there's no alcohol in it. They're bringing that terpene profile flavor into the experience. And then on the opposite side, they're using cannabis terpenes to make an IPA taste like cannabis. That's innovative. See, that's really the root of what disruption means. It's innovation. It's not novelty. I would say things like double barrel is novelty. It's tchotchke. It's okay, fine, cool. Take 2 things, make them work together. But true innovation is taking something completely different and changing the status quo. Boveda is a perfect example, fitting that niche that needed to be fit, finding that spot, and then changing the industry and dominating their portion of the market. So for us, everything at the root of what we do is in strategy. There's plenty of good-looking brands out there. If you are a high-quality brand or a consistent brand, then you are that's what we call a minimum standard. How are you going to radically differentiate your brand and as we call it, zag in the industry to where you're not another sheep in the herd? Because your main competitor is not another cannabis brand. It's brand noise. It's brand clutter. And so what we do as a creative agency, through all the variety of full-spectrum tools, from web development to design, marketing, packaging, et cetera, the whole spectrum, we help you find your zag. We help you determine how you can radically differentiate your brand and rise above the noise of the industry and all the other brands that are out there vying for attention.
I definitely recommend that you take a look at the website for the Hybrid Creative. I learned a lot on there, and also you can see what a good-looking brand looks like, and you can learn more, of course, about the work that Zack does. That seems so entertaining and so charming, so thank you very much. Glad to be here with you. Our next speaker is Ashley Elsner. She is the CEO and founder of Artery Inc. And Green Market Bank. Ashley is a financial expert. She's a lawyer. She's an expert in financial services and technology for the cannabis market. She works in digital payments, banking alternatives, and more. Ashley, are you going to save us this banking issue? What are we going to do? Let's turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. That is far more than I deserve. I hope very much that there will be more movement by traditional institutions into the cannabis industry. I disagree on where the actual motivation comes for them staying out of it. Having worked with quite a few financial services firms in the past, I am aware of the conservative nature of it, and for good reason. They want to make sure that these stable, that the economy remains stable and is something that is available to everybody. And if there are situations that cause them to shut down, they don't want to have that happen. And there are opportunities for them to do well in this industry. There's also opportunities for them to fall into pits with this industry. So there are a lot of things that need to change in order for them to get comfortable with it, and we are working towards pushing them towards accepting more, being able to use our services to accept more cannabis accounts. My apologies. Following Zack is just really, it's hard.
Oh, look, I wanted to put the charming marketing guy first.
Really,
I didn't realize he was going to intimidate the rest of us.
Banking is the number one most pain in the ass problem. It's the reason behind
So
all
awful.
of the crime, all of the challenges, all of the dark side of cannabis comes from banking. So to be willing to tackle and jump on something like that and take that on as the focus of your business, to me feels like it's bold, it's innovative, and therefore should you be the one that's successful? Highly disruptive. Whoever cracks
Yes.
this code is going to be the one that like saves the day for the industry.
I think we've cracked it. So this is, my background actually is financial services law. I was with Sidley Austin for several years in their financial regulatory group out in New York City. I worked for Bessemer Venture Partners in legal and operations. This is my second fintech, actually. My first fintech was an online hedge fund investment platform. This was back in 2011, before that space got crowded. We did fine in that, but nobody invests in fintech, frankly. It's just not one of those spaces where institutional investors like to invest. I'm sure that that's a familiar thing that many people in this industry have also had to deal with, is a lack of institutional support. Banking itself is a challenge. There's a lot of regulations around it, and doing it wrong, you go to prison, period. And it's one of those things where people also don't recognize that payments is another space that you can get into pitfalls with. And there are technologies that are usable for this. Our banking industry, see, I would argue that our product is less, it's less disruptive for this space. It's just frankly a necessity for this space, and more disruptive for traditional banking services and traditional payments. This is a rail that frankly could replace ACH. It could replace Fedwire. You're seeing that actually in a lot of locations across the globe, and the US has actually been very slow to adopt financial technologies that could be very attractive for banking, and frankly are no-brainers when you start actually looking at the technology themselves and what they're currently using. But our disruption, the disruption that we provide, and as you can tell, I'm really a background person. I'm disrupting things on the B2B side. I'm interested in providing the options for people to use as an alternative to bank-owned rails or federal government-owned rails. This is it's something that provides an additional layer of security because you don't end up being closed out of the system, which is controlled, frankly, by a few large, but just a few corporate players. And it's, the ugly truth about this is that the majority of state banks and smaller institutions, regional banks, they're licensing their rails from the larger institutions. And that means that they have to be careful what they do. They want to support the industry. They do. Most of them are affected by this themselves. But they also have to comply with both regulation, of course, but I think that the government has been more supportive to trying to bring financial institutions on board, and the financial industry itself has been very cautious in moving in, because it's a circular argument. You guys are in cash, so it means you're more likely to money launder, and we don't want to be handling money laundering. But it's like, okay, well, but the cash piece, the only reason why we're in cash is because you guys refuse to bank us. And so this ends up being the secular, yeah, exactly, this silly argument that frankly has this circular format to it that really doesn't have a whole lot of logic. And it is fixable, and frankly, I put it upon the financial institutions themselves. It is their responsibility within our society to actually monitor these transactions, that they have a privileged place in our society, and they need to live up to that privilege. So that is what we're trying to help them do, get them more comfortable with it, and also get them more comfortable with financial technology that they are also not really that well up on.
Ashley, Green Market Bank.
Sorry to get in the weeds.
Green Market Bank is focused on providing business banking services to the marijuana industry. Tell us a little bit about that. What is it that you guys do?
So actually, Green Market Bank was my old trade name while I was learning this industry. I knew that I wanted to solve the banking problem. I knew that there was a problem with payments as well, and was trying to take a two-pronged approach to the cash problem in this industry. Artery is our product. Artery Pay is our website. And what we are doing, we are working with banking institutions, some of the smaller institutions that, like I said, have been limited in their ability to work with this industry because of either lack of capacity or concern about whether they were going to lose the licenses on their ACH and Fedwire rails. concern about whether they were going to, yes, possibly get into trouble for working with this industry on a legal basis. Although I think a lot of them have sort of moved away from that expectation. So we wanted to work with them and get them comfortable with it. And so what we do is we do know your customer, we do anti-money laundering reporting, all of this compliance that they have to do anyways. We do it ourselves. It's an added layer of compliance. And then we provide this back channel separate distributed ledger. We are using blockchain with smart contracts. There's no fluctuation in the value of any of the contracts. The capital in is the capital out. It represents your contract to the underlying dollars that are held in trust on your behalf. It is not, there's no shenanigans. We're not trying to build something that is going to be outside of the banking system. We know that we need their help. There is no way to do this without them. Like I said, they have a privileged place in our society. They are our transaction rails, and we need them to work with us in order to make this work. And so we are working with banking partners. Of course, I can't tell you, I'm under NDA. Can't tell you who. But we have banking partners here in California, and they are holding capital for our members. They are allowing us to handle the transactive rails on that behalf. But basically, we're PayPal on blockchain. It's a very simple system. It's a ledger that is closed. There's no exchange trading. But it allows transactions to move seamlessly and instantaneously using the newest and most secure technology that's available for transaction processing. It really is kind of it's a new age in financial technology, and the US will be adapting a little more slowly than the rest of the world. That had some enabling regulations come into play, but they will eventually have to adopt this as well. So our disruption may be more towards the banking industry and more towards the credit card industry than actually towards cannabis, because what we want to do, as Artery implies, is provide you with that lifeblood and make it safer for everybody to transact in this space. Transact with one another, as well as transact with your customer.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Let's hear for Ashley the passion that she's bringing to this issue, and I cannot imagine how difficult it is to be where you are. So disrupting, we're trying to disrupt the media and marketing. We're trying to get ahead in the banking industry and financial services. We've got so much that we have to do. The next speaker I'm going to introduce is Lambert. He's the Strategic Business Unit Manager, that's a mouthful, by the way, of Boveda, which I use on a regular basis. My dispensaries, we have to keep our cannabis fresh. The product is actually very innovative and useful. It keeps the cannabis just shelf ready and great for our consumers. But he has a background that's so diverse. Lance comes from media. Over the past 12 years, he's worked primarily in the .com and digital media space. He's worked for several big companies, including Scripps, the Cannabis, and at Weed Maps, he was actually the director of media operations and the publisher of marijuana.com. He became a part of the industry in 2013, really, when he joined up with the Denver Post, where he was the director of ad operations and the GM of the Cannabis. So Lance recently took over a position there at Boveda. Tell us more about the product, about yourself, about the disruption that you're causing. Let's hear it.
That title is so fun. The further I get in my career, the longer my title gets. I don't know what and sorry, I lost my voice yesterday. Yeah, so as far as disrupting, it's kind of funny. That's been a better part of my life for some reason. Did spend several years in the digital media space, and was a part of .com. First started disrupting, I'd say, with Autotrader.com. We decided to disrupt, Chip Perry, the founder, but we decided to disrupt the automotive industry as far as how you find cars. That was the early years, back when I think Craigslist was the only option outside of print publications. But then, just continue that on in my career. And as far as disrupting in this specific industry, it was interesting. I was working for Scripps Media, which you all might know if you're familiar with Food Network, DIY. Those kind of companies. That's who I worked for, and then got called by a former VP to move to Colorado. And it was January of 2014 when I officially moved. And it's funny, being from Northern California, from up by where the Waldos came from, here in Marin County. And you know, our VP said, hey, I think there's a good opportunity here. You know, Colorado happens to be legalizing cannabis. And I was like, yeah, I heard. And she's all, you know, you've done some great things, but we're launching a website called The Cannabis. It was a brainchild of a friend called Ricardo Baca, who was my editor-in-chief. And went over there to head up media operations, but I was a guy behind the scene of The Cannabis. The way that that was a disruptor to this industry, and I'm not knocking, I'm friends, the media pool, as we call it in this industry, is very tight. I mean, we have a couple individuals in this very room that are in this space, but we're all friends, and we all respected, you know, while High Times was Matt Stang and the crew were kind of more on the deep end, a little more cultural, a little less mainstream. We did have other companies like Dope and Eugenio at Cannabis Now, and the list goes on. But when we came along with The Cannabis, we wanted to take a different approach. We wanted to cover the industry from a true professional journalism standpoint. We followed what was called SPJ, or what is called SPJ Code of Ethics, a Society of Professional Journalists. And so we covered the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when companies, not naming any names, but that first year had 1,000 plants seized because of exposure to pesticides, we covered that. When edible companies were off by, I don't know, 90 milligrams of THC in what was deemed a 100 milligram bar, we covered that. So we didn't necessarily make a lot of friends, but the people who were doing it right in this industry respected us because we were covering the good, the bad, the ugly. We were pointing out the people that weren't doing it right and weren't doing this industry a service, and then obviously rewarded and complimented and covered the ones that were. So that was definitely a fun stint. Did move on to become director of media operations at Weed Maps and become publisher of their subsequent news site, marijuana.com. I'd say another disruptor in the industry. Love them or hate them, they definitely have made quite a splash in this industry. They've been around 10 years. It's definitely a good ride. And then segued over, which I think Debby came up to the booth. She's like, okay, you're in digital media and you're in .com and all that. Then you came to Boveda. I was like, well, you know, after Weed Maps, I kind of decided I wanted to be my own boss. I'd start a few companies. So like this guy over here, I was like, you know, I know enough people in the industry. You get to know some key players. And so I was going to go off on my own. And Boveda approached me. Phenomenal company, huge fan of theirs. They're similar to other companies I work for where they're an industry leader and a disruptor in their own right. And you might ask what they disrupt. So Boveda, I'd say, you know, slowly we're disrupting the sales of tortillas, of recycling orange rinds, and lettuce, maybe some wet paper towels if you're like me back in my childhood years up here in Northern California. But really it is, joking aside, you know, the technology can be looked at in many perspectives, but really Boveda is a technology company. And I compare it, I love speaking in metaphors and analogies, and this guy coming from media will appreciate, because that's how you help people understand what you're doing. But it's like taking your clothes down to the river when you have a washing machine in the garage. Like seriously, people, it's time to get with the tech. Put down the tortillas, put down the wet paper towels. There's a safer way to not only store but to cure your cannabis. The industry as a whole, you know, I'm a huge advocate. I don't consider myself an advocate. I do activist. It is more so an advocacy. Being cancer-free for 15 years, I transitioned my life to being a true believer of holistic and Eastern medicine. Definitely believe that cannabis falls under that. But I'm a big fan of everyone that is a disruptor, and I agree. I mean, you started touching on it, but there's a lot of outside disruptors, a lot of inside disruptors, but not everyone look underneath. I mean, there's definitely sheep out there. I think a good example is everyone loves talking about big pharma, big alcohol, big tobacco. They're coming, they're here, they own property in all the prime locations. But it's interesting, we're working with someone, most people might not know, but you may recognize the name, Adolphus Busch, who Adolphus Busch V happens to be the great-great-grandson of Adolphus, who started a little company called Anheuser-Busch that got bought out by a company called InBev for several $1 billion a few years ago. You know, when first hearing, oh, I'd be possibly working with someone at Busch, I'm not a big fan of alcohol. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I skim and hurt myself surfing or something, I definitely use alcohol. It's more so topically. But for anything, both medical and recreationally, I'm more so a cannabis guy. But hearing his story and hearing this individual speak, and he's like, you know what, interesting thing happened. This parent company bought out my family company. Part of the contingency was that no Busch could work for Anheuser-Busch ever again. So that's kind of an interesting fact. So don't think someone with the last name Busch is that big alcohol that's coming in to besiege on our industry. But number two, he pointed out an obvious, which all came together in conversation, was he's doing the same thing that his great-great-grandfather did. He's coming in since he did because he went through college. He due process. He tried to go back to his former family's company. He went through the proper steps to apply for a job. They said, nope, the stipulation still stands. No Bush will ever work for this company. So what did he do? He moved to Colorado. He started his own company in cannabis. And I'm like, dude, props to you. ABV is the company he started. He's like, I'm doing the same thing my great-great-grandpa did. And I think that is so cool that, if you look at things and you just step back and look at not just the trees, but the forest as a whole, and look at this individual as he's disrupting 2.0 for a family. And so same thing, I think, with, with other aspects of the industry. Not everyone in pharma is bad pharma. Not everyone in tobacco is bad tobacco. We need to be open-minded and understand that some things are inevitable. And if we want this, it's a catch-22. We can't have our cake and eat it too. And I'm like this guy. I mean, growing up in Marin County, although I made fun of hippies because the patchouli oil always got to me. But I have a huge respect. I've come around to hummus and 10-grain bread. I truly do have a respect for it. But if we want this to go mainstream, we need the help. And we need to find those partners and get those alliances in place, but make sure that they carry through the culture in the craft that has been around for decades. That's the thing that we really need to be cognizant of. No matter if you're an activist, if you're an advocate, or if you're just out of the green closet like me, it all matters in making a difference in moving this industry forward. So all of us, to your point, we're all disruptors in this room just for being a part of this and maybe posting up on social media that you came.
I love it. Very articulate. Okay, here's a question. You come from this broad perspective. You're in consumer goods right now. You came from tech. How has tech changed the way the industry cures, stores, and sells cannabis products?
Great question there.
That you wrote. Thank you.
So many different levels. My gosh. God, long live the turkey bag. That's one thing I'm waiting for change on. But we've done some extensive studies, and there's so much more to a turkey bag. Talk about not taking a book by its cover. I get why so many of my friends use them. But a lot of the technology, I think I'd say one company, just as an example on the cure side, CureTube, which is an up-and-coming group out of San Diego. Traditionally, anyone that knows or anyone that has friends in the industry, we talk about black and yellows or HDXs or totes or whatever you want to call them. But a lot of people, even when using turkey bags, store in totes. They're not the most advantageous way to go, no matter if it's curing or storing. They're awkward, they're bulky, you load them all up, you load them all down, never mind the fact that they weigh several pounds. Then these guys come along with something that does make sense, that's easier to roll, that's easier to check, that's easier to go through the curing process with as far as venting and such and burping. And then they were smart enough to go, we want technology that matches our efforts, and created a tray, unbeknownst to us in the beginning, and by no means were we offended. It was kind of cool. They created a tray for Boveda because they said, again, you shouldn't be using tortillas to try to bring up the relative humidity of your flour. I'm a purist. My friends might call me a can of snob. I prefer the term purist. So I am very picky on what I consume. I want to know where it comes from. I want to know how it was produced, etc. I don't care about the race to the top. You can keep your Chernobyl and amnesia. Half of those 30% THC ratings are bullshit anyway. But the fact of the matter is that they embrace the fact that tech exists. And the last thing that someone like me wants is cross-contamination from something that happens to be produced with yeast, like tortillas, or something that has its own respective terpenes, like orange rinds. So I think that's very innovative and definitely makes a difference. When you get into the tech side, what some of these companies are doing, rather it be green bits, or trees, the POS systems are next level. It's stuff that I wouldn't have expected to see for another several years. I think the fact that, people like ArcView and BDS Analytics, Roy's company, are saying, hey, this year in 2019, this is going to be a $19 billion with a B industry. It's only going to continue to grow. It's nice that the right people are coming in and taking a chance. You guys don't realize, there's a lot of OGs in the room that I see right now, by the way, which is cool. But some of you newer to the industry, there's people that are leaving some seriously great opportunities and jobs. And all these guys get hit up. I know I don't throw it out there. People know I'm an advocate. But when I travel, and seriously, I'm a Gen Xer, and my friends are still like, you're in cannabis. Why are you going to South America? Why do you go to Australia? Why do you go to Europe like we do, right? It's like, because we're not the only ones. U.S. is not the number one in many things anymore. Cannabis, we definitely have the culture and the craft and the strains, But my gosh, the stuff that's going on from a medical and from a scientific standpoint in a little city called Tel Aviv, it's only 70 years old, a lot of people don't know about, but it's in Israel. It is phenomenal. We know about 435 cannabinoids associated. They're upwards of 900. It's insane what they're doing. So they're disrupting too.
Hey, let's hear it for Lance, you guys. That's incredible. Okay. And Gaio's up front saying, we've got to move along here, 5 minutes, and it's perfect timing because we have our final speaker with a 5-minute presentation. Look, this guy's got an incredible history. Vinoo Varghese, he's an East Coast lawyer. He started in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. He's award-winning. He's a nationally known criminal defense lawyer. He's a white-collar criminal defense lawyer. He practices in federal courts. He's also a talking head. He's on Fox. He's on CNN, CBS, MSNBC, HLN, where he's a legal analyst and he gives commentary, trying to keep people out of prison. He's not a business lawyer. He's on the East Coast where people still go to prison for this stuff, and he's got a presentation for us, so let's hear it. Thank you. Take it away.
I wanted to just say I'm very happy to be here. I run a law firm in New York on Wall Street, criminal defense firm, but we practice all over the country. One of the things that I get to do, as Debbie just mentioned, is I get to speak about a lot of different things on television. So I've been on Fox talking about taxes. I often talk about the Mueller investigation on MSNBC. This is Israeli TV. Been on CNN talking about, whatever, that insider trading at that point. There are different things, Tucker Carlson. There's a whole bunch of different things that I get to speak about, and I enjoy speaking about this stuff. Laura Ingraham, it was a lot of fun. But one of the reasons that I'm here is I want to talk about the war on drugs that's still going on. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart because I was a prosecutor. So when I started my career 20 years ago in the Brooklyn DA's office, I was a soldier in the war on drugs. And this is something that, after time and reflection and seeing what I saw, I left. It was one of the big reasons I left. And I write about this stuff. I wrote a post last year about Jeff Sessions and going back to things and making him the most dangerous man in America. Earlier today, they talked about the new Attorney General, soon-to-be Attorney General William Barr, and how he seems to be a little bit, better towards the drug world. I'm not sure that's true. I just think he's a more polished version of Jeff Sessions. There's still a lot of arrests all across this country, involving marijuana, and it shouldn't be. The reason is that the DEA still has marijuana as Schedule I drugs. I don't know how many guys have ever seen this, but I'm sure a lot of you have. But if you look what it says, Schedule I drugs, substances or chemicals defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and high potential for abuse, heroin, and marijuana are on there. Schedule II drugs, a little less severe, include cocaine, meth, methadone, hydromorphine, oxycodone, fentanyl.
Thanks, Big Pharma.
Adderall. I mean, this is amazing that this hasn't changed because the law enforcement prosecutorial powers in this country keep it this way, and they do that because we have a prison industrial complex in this country, which I'll talk about. I'll show a little clip here.
Who's worse, right? Is El Chapo worse than El Chupeta? I don't know. I mean, 150 murders, $1 billion forfeited. I mean, and then when you talk about credibility, which was your original question, do these guys have any credibility, right? I mean, they are clearly here. These are awful, awful human beings. And listen, I've seen this in court myself when you've had witnesses, way worse records than my client or the other defendants on trial. In a white-collar case, all of a sudden guys who committed 10 times more fraud than the guys testifying against them. The question is, why is the government doing this? And ultimately, you're going to ask the question when history judges us, a couple decades from now, billions and billions of dollars spent on the war on drugs. Was this worth it? right? If they had legalized this, taxed this, and brought this and moved to erode the violence. But we have a prison-industrial complex in this country, and that's what this war on drugs is really about. And El Chapo is just way for the United States government to say, hey, we got the big fish, or one of them, and everybody else will have them cooperate.
Right.
So, one of the things we provided in your bag is a little chart, and it has where the basis, where marijuana is from a legal perspective, where it's been legalized, decriminalized, medical marijuana. There's a list of all the states. It's in your in the bag that they came in. So take a look at that. And that's pretty much it for now.
Question. Yes, let's hear it. You're on the East Coast. Things are so different. We're here in California. We've had a legal market for 20 years. I mean, I was just in Boston. I couldn't believe how alive and well prohibition is. It was so frightening to see in these kind of new and emerging markets how far behind people are. But I know you're a lawyer, and you're before federal judges. What are the judges thinking these days?
Unfortunately, judges haven't really changed. These are lifetime appointments, federal court, district court judges. So some of these guys have been on the bench for 20, 30 years, and they believe in the war on drugs. Most of them were federal prosecutors before they became judges. And so this is what they're used to. When you talk about the Schedule I drugs, that's built into the federal sentencing guidelines and how much time people are looking at. So it's going to take a generational change before judges change.
Generational change. Well, we've only got 1 minute to accomplish that generational change. That's not going to work. Okay, look, you guys would not believe how intelligent and dedicated this panel is, and if you open up their brains like a file cabinet, how much you can learn. So I encourage you. We only had 45 minutes to talk about this incredible topic. We can't tell you everything that we wanted to tell you during this amount of time. So stop them in the hallways, stop them outside, stop them on their way out the room, and ask questions, and get involved with their companies and learn more. And hey, I guess if you're on the East Coast and you need a lawyer, we got the best guy that there is over there right now. I want to say thank you to everyone. Yeah, come by my dispensary, by the way, really. I'm leading tomorrow a tour of vape lounges in San Francisco. You can go to the Emerald Farms tours booth and get your ticket. We're going to go see what's happening in San Francisco. Do you guys know that on-site consumption is not even legal in the Netherlands? It's just tolerated. California is one of the few places on earth where we have legal lounges where you can go in a dignified manner and consume cannabis. I was so curious to see them all. I talked to my friend Victor at Emerald Farm Tours. I'm like, let's do a tour and go see them all. We're going tomorrow. We're going to see at least 5 legal vape lounges where you can consume cannabis right on the spot. I'm very excited about that. Talk about disruption. We want to be ourselves. We want to be in peace. We want to live our lives free, and we're going to do it. Make no mistake about it. Prohibition's going to end. The federal judges are going to die? I don't know. Eventually, we're going to put new people in.
That is
who
what's
have
going to
better
change.
ideas.
Or maybe they'll just have to follow the law if we get the laws changed.
We are going to transition out of prohibition, and it's going to be with the help of every person in this room. So thank you so much for attending our panel, and we look forward to talking to you.
One more time, Debbie and the entire panel, moving right along. Thank you so very much.